Good morning folks, 21st Century Caveman here. Hope everybody's safe, hope everybody's well. So for those of you who watch my channel on a regular basis, you will note that I've recently uploaded several videos where I've been applying lining paper to ceilings, and the next part of that project will be to apply the papers to the walls, and I will do one or two videos on that. Now, I've had lots of interesting comments from people saying, well, basically, why would you bother? What's the point of using lining paper? Just get your ceilings and your walls skimmed. And to be fair, they are reasonable questions, but what I want to do is to address the circumstances in which ideally you ought to consider using lining paper instead of getting somebody to come in and do the skimming, and the circumstances in which basically it would be better just to get the walls and the ceilings skimmed rather than faffing around with lining paper. Now, I have made a few notes just to make sure I cover all of the points, so if I keep looking down and not at the camera, sorry about that, I'm just referring to my notes. Okay, so lining paper versus skimming. When should you ideally use lining paper? So this will be in situations where the background is stable and it only has minor imperfections and damage. Basically, you can only cover up so much with lining paper. So if you're prepared to deal with the hassle, and by that I mean setting out the table, cutting paper, pasting it, you know, having a certain amount of room available to enable you to paper your walls and your ceilings. So when ought you to consider getting your ceilings and walls skimmed rather than faffing around with lining paper? And I would say that these are scenarios in which the background is quite rough, it's been patched or needs patching. In other words, where it's all over the place, because there's only so much you can cover up with lining paper. So basically, if it's moderately damaged or worse, just get somebody in to skim those areas if you want the job to be done quicker. Now, this is a little bit of an anomaly because at least in normal times, whatever that is now, you could, if you wanted a good plasterer, you'd have to wait several weeks, you know, between sort of like 4 and 6 weeks to actually get a good plasterer to come and do the work for you. I don't know whether things have changed now. During lockdown, they may not have done, because I know there aren't restrictions on people going into other people's homes to do stuff like this, providing they're wearing appropriate PPE and providing, of course, that they take appropriate precautions. Now, the thing is, of course, so there may be a waiting list to get a good plasterer in to do the work, and also once the walls and ceilings have been skimmed, then they still need to dry out before you're in a situation where you can paint them. And depending on the environment, the plastering's been done, that could be a week, it could be a couple of weeks. Basically, when the plaster starts to go white, or when it's white rather, you know that it's dried out sufficiently to paint it over. Whereas if, for example, you're doing the work yourself and using lining paper, then you can just do it whenever you're ready, basically. So there isn't a delay in that respect. So it is a little bit of a misnomer. You get the work done quicker. Yeah, you might be able to in terms of the actual job, but you might have to wait for somebody to come and do the work and then wait afterwards to put yourself in a position where you can actually start painting. Now, if you want a more durable finish, so in areas where there's lots of traffic, so for example in a hallway, or if you're in a room you've got, say, small kids and they're constantly knocking things against the wall and banging stuff, then yeah, you might want to get it skimmed instead. Having said that, if the background is nice and solid and stable, then if you put lining paper on it, it'll be absolutely fine. Now, if you've got a difficult background such as Artex, so these are your stippled ceilings and walls, now that's a good example of a situation whereby there's no point in even consider lining paper. They either need to be skimmed over or they need to be boarded and then skimmed. Now, certainly from my own experience, when I talk to people who are doing work on their properties, or they know somebody who is, one of the first things you say is, oh yeah, we've got to get the ceilings or the walls skimmed. Everybody talks about skimming, but very few people talk about lining paper. So there is something of a misconception out there that if, you know, you're trying to sort of start up a property or make something good, your only option is skimming, and that simply is not the case. So one of the biggest reasons you would consider using lining paper is down to cost. It's all about money, because if you use lining paper, and it's appropriate to use lining paper, you can save yourself an absolute packet. And just in order to give you some idea as to the cost savings which can be made, I've actually noted these on a sheet of paper here, which I'm going to talk you through now, and I'm also going to zoom in on this. Just bear with me. So the three ceilings, the 3-bedroom ceilings, so I plastered, taped and papered all of those ceilings, so 2 double ceilings and a smaller ceiling, and that cost me around about £86. Now if I was to get a plaster in to skim that, certainly in the area I live in, you're looking at a cost of about £650. Now in places like London or in some of the big conurbations, then it could be up to £1,000. So basically, if we work on the figure of £650, I have saved approximately £564 by doing that work myself. So let's now have a look at the walls then. So all this has been costed out, and I know for a fact that I can do all of the walls, so in other words prepare them and paper them using 1400 grade lining paper for £128 or thereabouts, and for 2 large bedrooms and a smaller bedroom to line all of the walls, it's going to cost around about £1,000. So what's the saving then? £872. So look, these savings are significant. So let's just tot these up, shall we? What's the total cost for me to line all of the ceilings and the walls? And that also includes taping and plastering the ceiling. Well, the cost is only around about £214. Now if you were to get somebody in to do the work for you, to do the skimming, then if we add those two up, it's going to be around about £1,650. In somewhere like London, you know, you're not going to get any change out of £2.5 grand. So if we work on these figures here, look, I have saved, or will save, over £1,400. So that's the reason why you would consider using lining paper rather than getting somebody in to skim your ceilings and walls, if the circumstances justified it. So these figures are absolutely significant. And if, for example, you're in a situation whereby you don't have a lot of money, or for example if you're a young couple, you've got lots of work to do in your property, you've been saving hard for your deposit, etc., and you're able to do this sort of work yourself, just think what you could do with that extra £1,400 in your pocket rather than somebody else's. I mean, if you can do all that work for just over 200 quid, I mean, that's an absolute bargain as far as I'm concerned. So you can actually take this a stage further. So the main thing is basically that by doing this work yourself, you are saving an absolute shed load of money. Now the thing is, not only are you saving money by not employing somebody else, because let's not forget, most of the cost here is the labour. It's the cost of somebody else doing the work. It's not the materials. So basically you'll be saving money because you're not getting somebody else in to do it, and you're only paying for the materials. But you're also making money, because not only are you improving the presentation of your property, you're also adding value to it, and obviously your home is an asset. And I think the third other point to make is the fact that you're also improving your skill base. So you're saving more money, you're increasing the value of your asset, and the more of this type of stuff you do, the more your skills will improve, the more confident you will become about tackling projects, and the more benefit you'll get from doing this sort of thing yourself. So guys and girls, I hope you found this video useful. I hope it's clarified the circumstances in which you should consider using lining paper as opposed to getting a plaster in to skim your ceilings and your walls. And if you hear anybody talking about that, then just refer them to this video. So the main point about this is the fact that use lining paper if you can do the work yourself, because you are going to save yourself a shed load of money. It's all about that, saving money. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.